Alright, strap in, dim the lights, and keep one eyebrow raised because we're about to take a long, twisty, grin-filled ride through a horror story that proves one universal truth. If something is smiling too hard, it absolutely cannot be trusted. Imagine a curse that doesn't lurk in dark basements or creak through haunted hallways. No, this one beams at you. It grins, it smiles like it knows your secrets and already shared them with everyone else. This is the kind of supernatural parasite that doesn't chase you, it waits, it watches. And when its current victim meets a very public, very unfortunate end, it leaps to whoever happened to be looking at exactly the wrong moment. And hey, if you enjoy deep dives into horror chaos like this, do your future self a favor and hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell for Nchitv. The curse might not get you, but the algorithm definitely will. Today's story is about fame, guilt, control, and a smile that absolutely does not mean everything is okay. The Unlucky Inheritance. Our terrifying tale opens 6 days after the tragic end of therapist Rose Cotter, who learned the hard way that helping people process trauma does not include inheriting supernatural parasites. Unfortunately, the curse doesn't disappear with her. Oh no, it jumps ship. Enter Joel, a decent guy who is now holding the supernatural equivalent of a ticking time bomb. Imagine inheriting your grandmother's porcelain doll collection, except the dolls can follow you, torment you, and ruin your life without ever moving. That's the vibe of this curse, a supernatural game of tag. And now you have it, except the stakes are a little higher than playground rules. This curse, let's affectionately call it the grinning gloom, operates on a very simple rule. Witness the victim's death, and congratulations, you're next. Think of it like a chain letter, except instead of bad luck, you get hallucinations, psychological torture, and a guaranteed mental breakdown. Way worse than spam email. Joel decides he's not going down quietly. Rather than, say, seeking help or making better life choices, he opts for a highly questionable DIY solution. His plan? Engineer a public, violent situation where someone else becomes the witness and takes the curse off his hands. If you're thinking, this sounds like a terrible idea, congratulations, you've seen horror movies before. Joel, channeling his inner vigilante with a very shaky hand, tries to execute this plan in a dingy, dimly lit urban alley that smells faintly of regret and old pizza. He manages to corner his first target, a tough-looking brute who seems like he was born scowling. But just as he's about to complete the transfer, the witness he'd lined up, a second, equally unpleasant criminal, panics and opens fire. In the ensuing, chaotic, and frankly amateurish shootout, Joel accidentally kills the designated witness. Amidst the confusion, at the precise moment when the witness drops dead, an entirely uninvolved passerby shows up at the worst possible moment to see what is happening. Then boom, inheritance transferred. That man is Louis Fregoli, a local dealer whose biggest worry 5 minutes ago was probably whether or not his Wi-Fi password was too obvious. Meanwhile, Joel, trying to escape the escalating disaster, dashes into an oncoming pickup truck, and fate decides he's run out of chances. And just like that, the grinning gloom has a brand new victim. The pop princess and the bad deal. Cut to the glamorous, yet brittle world of Skye Riley, a New York-based pop sensation. Skye is on the precipice of a massive comeback tour, a carefully orchestrated spectacle designed to erase the memory of her messy, public descent into substance abuse and a fatal car crash that took the life of her actor boyfriend, Paul Hudson. She's the picture of controlled perfection as she appears on the Drew Barrymore show, all glittering smiles and rehearsed contrition. Behind the scenes, her life is a suffocating cage. She is managed and babysat by her perpetually anxious, control-freak mother, Elizabeth, and their ever-vigilant clipboard-wielding assistant, Joshua. Her mother, Elizabeth, is a walking bundle of anxiety and micromanagement. If she could bubble-wrap her daughter, she absolutely would. Elizabeth treats Skye like a valuable but fragile piece of porcelain that could shatter at any moment, especially with the tour looming. Skye, however, is a master of the covert rebellion. After a particularly grueling rehearsal that leaves her with a genuine back injury, or so she claims, she decides to score some pain meds. Despite Elizabeth's microscopic supervision, Skye executes a flawless escape, proving that years of sneaking out for parties has honed her stealth skills to ninja level. Her destination, you guessed it, Louis Fregoli, the newly cursed drug dealer who also happens to be her former high school friend. When she arrives at Louis's apartment, the atmosphere is thicker than a cheap horror movie fog machine. Louis is a wreck, sweating, jittery, paranoid, and acting like every shadow owes him money. He mistakes Skye for an imminent manifestation of the grinning gloom and briefly menaces her with a decorative and likely dull ceremonial sword. Louis eventually calms down and goes to retrieve her requested Vicodin, That's when the gloom decides to make its grand entrance. Lewis starts screaming and flailing, consumed by an invisible terror. Skye, oblivious to the supernatural entity, simply thinks Lewis is having a severe public overdose, a messy reminder of the life she's desperately trying to escape. Then the horror. Lewis's face cracks into that signature, hideous, stretched-out grin. He grabs a massive barbell plate and in a sickening, deliberate act smashes his own face in, splattering the room and traumatizing Skye beyond comprehension. The transfer is complete. Skye, operating purely on fight-or-flight instinct and the ingrained fear of bad press, sees the blood, the drugs, and the corpse. Her first thought isn't call the police, it's call my lawyer. She flees the scene, leaving Lewis's tragedy behind like a really bad review. The descent into madness. That night, the grinning gloom decides to officially introduce itself. Skye, nestled in her high-end, ridiculously expensive apartment, is jarred awake by the sight of Lewis's mangled corpse, standing casually next to her bed, still wearing that sickening, contorted smile. This is the first of many personalized nightmares. The next day, her reality is a blender set to max chaos. Everywhere she goes, she's plagued by deranged, fleeting hallucinations. A waiter serving her coffee with an unnervingly wide grin, a fan in the street whose face suddenly elongates into a terrifying rictus, even a child giving her a smile that belongs on the cover of an existential dread album. Skye's meticulously crafted mental stability crumbles like a stale cookie. Desperate and lonely. She reaches out to her estranged friend Gemma, who provides a fleeting moment of normalcy, but the curse is always buzzing in the background. Skye receives a cryptic text from an unknown number, a man claiming to know she was at Lewis's apartment and warning her that she is in grave danger. Great, now she has a stalker and a demon. The peak of her public breakdown occurs at a swanky fundraiser hosted by the oily, perpetually smiling music executive Darius. Skye, scheduled to give an inspirational speech, watches in horror as the teleprompter melts into a field of grinning faces. She goes off script, launching into a deeply honest, unhinged tirade about how success is a gilded cage and fame has ruined her life, a spectacular PR disaster unfolding in real time. Then, the ultimate trigger, she sees her dead boyfriend Paul in the audience, smiling that awful, cursed smile. In a blind panic, she bolts, knocking over the event's elderly and presumably very well-connected host, thus completing the hat trick of career-ending moves. The Morris Maneuver. Fleeing the disaster, Skye meets Morris at a dive bar, the man behind the mysterious texts. Morris is a fascinating blend of conspiracy theorist and supernatural expert. He explains that he's been tracking the grinning gloom since it claimed his own brother. His theory is chillingly simple. The curse is a parasitic entity that needs a witness to feed. The curse passes upon witnessing the victim's death, and the only way to starve and potentially kill the parasite is to deny it a host by temporarily killing and then reviving the current victim. Morris's proposed solution: stop Skye's heart and then resuscitate her. A classic high-risk, low-reward horror movie gamble. Skye, understandably, refuses this impromptu, non-FDA-approved procedure, especially after being recognized by a pair of drunk bar patrons who want a selfie with the unhinged pop star. Back at her apartment, Skye collapses into a violent, sobbing breakdown. The grinning gloom is done with subtlety. It manifests as her backup dancers, their smiles freezing into terrifying masks. Skye tries to escape, but the entity is physically violent, throwing her around the room like a rag doll. The true horror begins when a massive, impossibly long skeletal arm forces its way down her throat. The cruel twist. Skye blacks out. When she wakes, she's at a secluded retreat, seemingly safe, but safety is an illusion. A sudden, jarring flashback reveals the true, sickening depth of Skye's trauma. She was responsible for Paul's death. During a drug-fueled argument, she intentionally crashed the car. The public narrative of a tragic accident was a lie meticulously crafted by Elizabeth. She attempts to argue with Elizabeth at the retreat, but her mother's face suddenly splits into the dreaded, cursed smile. Elizabeth brutally smashes a mirror and fatally stabs herself with a shard. Skye screams, but the terror is multiplied when she looks at her own hands and realizes the chilling truth. She was the one who stabbed Elizabeth. The entity had manipulated her, making her a murderer. Escaping the retreat, Skye reconnects with Gemma, or so she thinks. They steal a car and head to meet Morris. But a text comes through, a call from the real Gemma. The Gemma sitting beside her in the car, offering comforting, slightly too sweet advice, is the grinning gloom. The entity has been her companion, her confidant, her demon all week long. After a terrifying struggle for control of the vehicle, Skye finally meets Morris at the prearranged, completely unglamorous location. an abandoned Pizza Hut with a walk-in freezer. Morris plans to use the freezer's cold air to minimize brain damage during the heart-stopping procedure. But Morris briefly leaves and the entity seizes its final opportunity. It appears as Skye's former self, the drug-addled, reckless woman who killed Paul, mocking her with the painful truth. In a desperate final act of control, Skye fights the entity off and injects the syringe, intending to stop her heart. The entity is utterly unfazed. It smiles wide and says with cold finality that Skye is not in control. The final curtain call. The scene instantly shifts. Skye is no longer in a dingy Pizza Hut freezer. She's under the blinding spotlights of Herald Square Garden on stage for the opening night of her massive comeback tour. Joshua, Darius, and a very much alive Elizabeth are watching from the audience. The realization hits with crushing force. The entire day, the retreat killing Elizabeth, the car ride with fake Gemma, the Pizza Hut, was a sophisticated psychological illusion designed to torture and isolate her. The grinning gloom appears one last time, taking the form of her current, perfect pop star self. Then in a truly stomach-churning transformation, it tears its stomach open, revealing its true form, a colossal, bloody, skinless humanoid creature. It is a nightmare of biological horror, a pulsating, smiling monstrosity with multiple layers of screaming, grinning mouths nested within one another. Skye collapses, falling into a catatonic trance as the entity, a master puppeteer, brutally possesses her by ripping her own mouth apart, forcing its grotesque form inside. To the thousands of screaming fans in the stadium, it appears as though their pop idol has suddenly collapsed and is violently choking on stage. Then the final, dreadful curtain call. A possessed Skye rises, now wearing the ultimate menacing smile. In a swift, horrific move, she grabs her microphone and fatally stabs herself in the eye, an intimate, public, and definitive transfer of the curse to a stadium full of thousands of horrified witnesses. The cycle continues, and the audience is now the cursed recipient. As the credits roll, Skye's screams, warped and distorted, can be heard. She is now one of the entity's eternal voices, a permanent part of the grinning gloom's endless, terrifying performance. And that is where the story ends, or rather where it multiplies. If you enjoyed this deep dive into psychological horror, parasitic curses, and the terrifying cost of fame, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and support Nchitv for more long-form horror breakdowns just like this one. Because remember, sometimes the scariest monsters don't hide in the dark. They smile right at you, beaming face with smiling eyes.